I don't know if my hands are shaking because of the caffeine or the terror, but I can't get them to stop. Look, I need to get this out. I need to get this out of my head and into the world before the logic of it all collapses on me completely. My name is Cynthia. I'm 44 years old, I have bad knees, 2 maxed-out credit cards, and I work the graveyard shift at a place called Sal's 24/7 off Interstate 80 in central Pennsylvania. It's not glamorous. It's the kind of place where the linoleum is peeled up at the corners like sunburned skin, and the air always smells like a mixture of diesel fumes, burnt bacon, and disappointment. You know the kind of place. You've probably driven past 100 of them without looking twice. I need to ask you something before I keep going. It sounds crazy, but I need to ground myself. I need to know that the world outside this diner is still normal. That it's still spinning the way it's supposed to. I don't know where you're listening to this from. Maybe you're sitting in traffic in Los Angeles, watching the heat rise off the hood. Maybe you're tucked into bed in a suburb of Chicago, or you're working a late shift yourself in some warehouse in Texas. Do me a favor. Just acknowledge where you are. Write your city or your state in the comments, or just say it out loud to the room you're in. Anchor yourself. I need to believe there are still people out there living normal lives, safe in their geography, because right now, looking at the stain on table 4, I feel like I've fallen off the map. I feel like I've slipped into some crack in the pavement of America that wasn't supposed to be there. It started 3 nights ago. Or maybe it started years ago, and I just didn't notice the storm clouds gathering. I don't know. Time feels slippery now. It was Tuesday. 3:17 a.m. I remember the time because the digital clock on the ancient microwave behind the counter has this flicker. The colon between the 3 and the 17 was blinking out of sync, like a dying heartbeat. The diner was mostly empty. We had old man Miller in the corner, nursing a coffee that had gone cold an hour ago, staring at the rain streaking the glass. And 2 truckers at the counter, guys I knew by face but not by name, heavy-set, smelling of timber and wet flannel, eating eggs with the mechanical efficiency of men who just wanted to sleep. It was quiet. Not peaceful quiet. It was that heavy, suffocating silence you get in the middle of the night when the highway hum drops to a low drone. The kind of quiet where your own thoughts get too loud. I was behind the counter, refilling the sugar shakers. My back was aching, this sharp, hot line of pain shooting down my right leg. Sciatica. The doctor told me to stay off my feet, which is a hilarious thing to tell a waitress who hasn't had a vacation day since 2016. I was thinking about my rent. I was 3 weeks late. Again. I was thinking about my son, barely 20, who hadn't called me in 6 months because he was finding himself in Oregon, which I'm pretty sure is code for something I don't want to think about. I was feeling hollow. That's the only word for it. I used to be religious. Used to be. I grew up in a Baptist church where the pews were hard oak and the choir sang until the windows rattled. I used to believe that there was a plan, that God was watching. But life just grinds you down, doesn't it? It chips away at you, a divorce here, a bankruptcy there, a lonely night that turns into a lonely decade, until you wake up one day and the sky just looks like empty ceiling tiles. I hadn't prayed in 10 years. I figured if God was real, he was busy with people who mattered. Not waitresses at Sal's. Then the door chime rang. It wasn't the usual happy ding-dong that announces a customer. It sounded flat. Muted. Like the bell was ringing from underwater. A blast of cold air hit me. We're in PA, and it's cold in November, but this was different. This wasn't weather. It was the kind of cold that sinks right through your uniform and settles in the marrow of your bones. The hairs on my arms stood up, not from a chill, but from instinct. Primal fear. Like when a rabbit freezes in the grass because a hawk's shadow just passed over. I looked up. A man was standing in the vestibule, shaking off a black umbrella. He was tall. Unnaturally tall. He had to duck slightly to clear the door frame. He was wearing a suit, a charcoal gray, three-piece suit that looked expensive, tailored, and completely out of place at a truck stop at 3 in the morning. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine, reflecting the flickering fluorescent lights above. He stepped onto the linoleum, and I swear to you, he didn't make a sound. No click of heels. No squeak of rubber. Just silence. Just anywhere is fine, hon, I called out. My voice cracked. I cleared my throat, trying to sound like the cynical, seasoned waitress I am. Coffee's fresh. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at the truckers, who had both stopped eating and were staring at their plates like ashamed children. He walked straight to booth 4. The booth in the far back, near the restrooms. The one where the light flickers and the vinyl is taped up with silver duct tape. He sat down. His movements were fluid. Too fluid. You know how people move. We hitch, we adjust, we shift our weight. We're jerky. Biological. This man moved like oil pouring into water. He slid into the booth and folded his hands on the table. I took a breath, grabbed a menu and the coffee pot, and walked over. Every step I took toward booth 4 felt heavier. The air got thicker. It smelled, ozone-y. Like right before a thunderstorm, mixed with something else. Something sweet and rotting. Like lilacs on a grave. I reached the table. Menu? I asked, trying to keep my hand steady as I held it out. He didn't take it. He didn't even look at it. He was looking at me. And that's when I saw his face. It was generic. That sounds weird, but it's the only way I can describe it. If you asked an AI to generate handsome middle-aged man, this is what you'd get. Symmetrical. Smooth skin. Dark hair perfectly parted. But his eyes. His eyes were vantablack. No, not solid black, they had whites, they had irises that were a dark, muddy brown. But there was no light in them. You know how eyes reflect the room? How you can see a little spark of life? These eyes were matte. They absorbed the light. Looking into them made me feel dizzy, like I was standing on the edge of a cliff looking down into a deep, dark quarry. No menu, Cynthia, he said. His voice was like gravel grinding together deep underground. Low. Resonant. It vibrated in my chest cavity. I froze. I wasn't wearing a name tag. I'd lost it 2 weeks ago and Sal was too cheap to order me a new one. I didn't catch your name, I stammered, clutching the coffee pot like a weapon. Names are for the living, Cynthia, he said. He didn't smile. His mouth moved, but the rest of his face remained perfectly, terrifyingly still. And for those who still have hope. My stomach dropped. Look, mister, if you're not ordering, I can't. I am ordering, he interrupted. I'll have water. Boiling water. No lemon. No ice. Just, hot water. Hot water, he repeated. And your attention. I wanted to run. Every alarm bell in my head was screaming danger. Predator. Run. But I couldn't. My feet felt like they were nailed to the floor. I nodded, turned, and walked back to the counter. I felt his gaze on my back like a physical touch, a cold hand pressing between my shoulder blades. I poured the hot water. My hands were trembling so bad I splashed some on my thumb. It burned, but the pain felt distant, like it was happening to someone else. Who's the weirdo? One of the truckers, Big Mike, whispered as I passed him. He didn't look around. He was hunched over his eggs, gripping his fork so hard his knuckles were white. I don't know, Mike, I whispered back. Just eat and go. Something ain't right, Mike muttered. Air feels heavy. Like the pressure dropped. I brought the cup of hot water to booth 4. The man was sitting exactly as I left him. Hands folded. Staring at the empty seat across from him. I set the cup down. Anything else? He looked up at me again. Do you remember the summer of 1996, Cynthia? The question hit me like a physical blow. The air left my lungs. 1996, the summer I was 24. The summer I was pregnant. The summer I made a choice that I had buried under 30 years of denial and cheap wine. I don't know what you're talking about, I whispered. The clinic on 4th Street, he continued, his voice devoid of emotion. Just facts. Cold, hard facts. It rained that day too. You wore a yellow raincoat. You cried in the waiting room, but you didn't leave. You thought it would solve your problems. You thought it would give you freedom. He paused, tilting his head slightly, like a bird studying a worm. Did it give you freedom, Cynthia? Or did it just give you a different kind of chain? Tears pricked my eyes. Hot, sudden tears. Who are you? I hissed. How do you know that? I know everything that is written in the books, he said. Every secret whispered in the dark. Every promise broken. Every dollar stolen from the register when Sal isn't looking. I gasped. I had taken $20 from the till last week. Just 20. For gas. I was going to put it back on payday. I swore I was. I put it back, I lied. Lying, he said softly. It comes so naturally to you now. Like breathing. You lie to your boss. You lie to your son. You lie to yourself when you look in the mirror and say you're a good person. Stop it, I whimpered. Please. I'll call the police. He laughed then. It wasn't a human laugh. It was a dry, rasping sound, like dry leaves skittering on concrete. The police? They can't arrest a memory, Cynthia. They can't handcuff a consequence. He reached into his inner suit pocket. I flinched, thinking he was pulling a gun. He pulled out a wallet. It was old leather, cracked and worn. He opened it, but I couldn't see what was inside. You're tired, Cynthia, he said. The tone shifted. It wasn't mocking anymore. It was sad. No, not sad. Pitying. But a cold, detached pity. You're so tired of running on this hamster wheel. Working for tips. Counting pennies. Waiting for a retirement that will never come. You're hollowed out. A shell. I'm doing my best, I sobbed. I didn't care who heard me. I felt like I was being dissected. I'm trying. Are you? He leaned forward. The smell of rot grew stronger, overpowering the smell of bacon. Or are you just waiting to die? Waiting for the dark to finally take you? He looked down at the cup of hot water. He hadn't touched it. I have a tip for you, he said. A gratuity. For a lifetime of service. He closed the wallet. He didn't take out money. He placed his hand flat on the table. The skin on the back of his hand was pale, almost translucent. I could see the blue veins pulsing underneath, but the pulse was wrong. It was too slow. Thump. 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 The bill comes due, Cynthia, he whispered. For everyone. The ledger must be balanced. He stood up. Suddenly. Abruptly. Wait, I said. You didn't pay for the water. The water was free, he said. The message is what costs. He walked past me. He moved toward the door. As he passed the counter, the lights in the diner flickered violently. The microwave clock scrambled, showing 88:88 for a split second. The bell on the door didn't ring when he opened it. I stood there, frozen, watching him step out into the rain. He didn't open his umbrella. He just walked into the dark, and the shadows seemed to reach out and swallow him whole. 1 second he was there, the next, nothing. Just the wet pavement reflecting the neon sign. Jesus, Big Mike breathed from the counter. That guy gave me the creeps. I couldn't speak. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked down at booth 4. He had left something on the table. It was sitting on a napkin. From where I stood, it looked like a piece of leather. Maybe a coin purse? Or a folded dollar bill that was dirty. I walked over. My legs felt like jelly. I reached the table. The smell was intense now. Copper. Iron. Blood. And that chemical smell, formaldehyde. I looked down at the napkin. It wasn't leather. It was skin. I gagged, clapping a hand over my mouth. It was a jagged, irregular patch of flesh, about the size of a playing card. It was thick. The edges were raw and red, like it had been carved recently. The blood on the underside was still tacky, staining the white paper napkin crimson. There were hairs, dark, coarse hairs, still attached to one side. It was a piece of a scalp. But that wasn't the worst part. On the skin, tattooed in rough, black ink that looked like it had been done with a needle and ash, were words. The skin around the letters was inflamed, angry. I leaned in, my vision blurring with horror, trying to read the script. It was Old English font, jagged and cruel. Depart from me, I never knew you. And below that, a reference, Matthew 7 verse 23. I stared at it. The words seemed to writhe on the dead skin. Depart from me. I felt a scream building in my throat, a primal sound that started in my gut. I backed away, knocking into the table behind me. Cynthia. Big Mike called out. You okay? I couldn't answer. I just pointed. Then, the phone on the wall behind the counter rang. The old rotary phone that we only use for takeout orders. It rang with a shrill, piercing mechanical scream that cut through the silence. Arring. I looked at the scalp. Arring. I looked at the door where the man had vanished. Arring. I knew, with a sickening certainty, that I had to answer it. I knew who was on the other end. I stumbled to the phone. My hand shook as I lifted the receiver to my ear. Sal's, I whispered. There was static on the line. Heavy, grinding static. Like the sound of a radio tuned between stations. And then, a voice. Not the man's voice. This voice was screaming. It sounded like thousands of voices screaming in unison, layered over each other, a cacophony of agony. And then, one voice cut through the noise. A voice I hadn't heard in 20 years. Mom? My blood turned to ice. It was my mother. My mother who died of cancer in 2004. Mom? I choked out. Run, Cynthia, her voice distorted, cracking under the weight of the static. He left the mark. He marked you. The gates are opening. Who? Who was he? The reaper of the tares, she screamed. And he's not alone. Look out the window. The line went dead. I slowly lowered the phone. My heart was stopping. I could feel the silence of the room pressing in. I looked toward the front window of the diner. The rain had stopped. But the parking lot wasn't empty anymore. Standing at the edge of the light cast by the diner's sign, just where the darkness began, were figures. Dozens of them. Standing perfectly still. They were all wearing suits. They were all staring at me. And in the center of them was the man from booth 4. He raised a hand and pointed at me. And then he smiled. And his smile was too wide. It split his face, revealing rows of teeth that were not human, sharp, jagged, black needles. I scrambled back, grabbing the counter for support. "Mike!" I screamed. "Mike, look!" Big Mike spun around on his stool. He looked out the window. "What?" he said. "What is it, Cyn?" "There's nobody there." I looked back. The parking lot was full of them. Their eyes were glowing now, faint red embers in the dark. "They're right there." I shrieked. "Can't you see them?" Mike looked at me with genuine concern. "Cynthia, honey, you're shaking. There's nobody in the lot. Just my rig and the dumpster." He couldn't see them. Only I could see them. Because I was the one with the tip. I was the one with the verse. "I never knew you." That's when the lights went out completely. Total darkness. It wasn't the kind of darkness you get when you close your eyes. It was a physical weight. It felt like someone had poured concrete into the room. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face, but I could hear. I could hear everything. I could hear the rain tapping on the roof, but it sounded different now, sharper, like fingernails tapping on a coffin lid. I could hear Big Mike's breathing, heavy and ragged, just a few feet away. And underneath that, I could hear a low, vibrating hum. A sound like a hive of hornets buried deep inside the walls. I need you to listen to me. I mean really listen. If you're half listening to this while you fold laundry or play a video game, stop. Put the controller down. Look at the screen. If you haven't subscribed yet, you need to do it now. Not because I care about the numbers, God, none of that matters anymore, but because I don't know how long I have to tell this story, and you need to be here for the end. You need to hear how this finishes, because if you don't, if you walk away now, you might not recognize the signs when they come for you. And they will come. They are always watching, waiting for that one moment of weakness, that one cracked door in your soul. So please, hit that button, stay with me. Do not look away. The darkness lasted for 10 seconds. Maybe 20. It felt like a lifetime. Then, the emergency lights kicked on. You know that sickly, yellow-orange glow? The kind that makes everything look jaundiced? The diner was bathed in it. The shadows stretched out long and distorted, dancing on the peeling wallpaper. "Fuse must have blown," Mike said. His voice was shaking, trying to sound tough. He was a big guy, 6'4", used to hauling timber through storms, but I could smell the fear on him. It's a sour smell, like spoiled milk. Storm probably knocked a line down. He fumbled for his phone to use the flashlight, but it wouldn't turn on. "Piece of junk," he muttered, tapping the screen. "Battery was full 10 minutes ago." "It's not the battery, Mike," I whispered. I was backed up against the pie cooler, my apron bunched in my fists. "They're draining it. They take the light. They take everything." Mike looked at me, his face pale in the emergency glow. "Cynthia, you're scaring me." "Who is they?" "That guy in the suit. He's gone." "He's not gone," I said. My voice sounded hollow, like I was speaking into a tin can. "Look at the table, Mike. Look at the tip." I pointed a trembling finger at booth 4. The napkin was still there. The piece of flesh, the scalp, was sitting on it. In the dim light, it looked even worse. The edges seemed to be curling up, drying out, and the blood had turned black. The words "depart from me" seemed to glow faintly, a dull, heatless red, like dying embers. Mike walked over to the booth. "Don't touch it." I screamed. Mike, don't touch it. He stopped, looking down at the table. He squinted. Then he looked back at me with a confused expression. Touch what, Siwan? He said. It's a $50 bill. I froze. What? It's a 50, Mike said, reaching down. Guy left you a 50. It's a little dirty, got some grease on it, but, damn, that's a good tip for a cup of hot water. My head swam. No, I breathed. No, Mike, look closer. It's skin. It's human skin. Mike laughed, a nervous, jerky sound. You need some sleep, darlin'. It's just a bill. Look. He reached out and picked it up. As soon as his fingers touched the scalp, the air in the diner shrieked. It wasn't a sound you hear with your ears. It was a psychic scream that tore through my brain. I clapped my hands over my ears and fell to my knees. Mike didn't scream. He just went rigid. He stood there, holding the piece of flesh, his eyes wide, staring at nothing. His mouth hung open, slack. Mike? I whimpered. He didn't answer. He slowly turned his head toward me. His eyes were changing. The blue irises were bleeding out, the color draining away like watercolor paint in a sink, replaced by that same matte, light-absorbing darkness I had seen in the stranger. Mike, drop it. I yelled, scrambling backward, knocking over a stack of plastic cups. They clattered everywhere, loud in the silence. Mike isn't here, Mike said. But it wasn't his voice. It was the stranger's voice. That gravelly, subterranean rumble coming out of Mike's throat. Mike had sins of his own, Cynthia. Pornography on his phone. Anger in his heart. He was available. Get out of him. I screamed. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just reacting. I grabbed the nearest thing to me, a heavy glass sugar dispenser. The thing wearing Mike's body smiled. It raised the hand holding the scalp and brought it to its nose, inhaling deeply. Smells like judgment, it purred. Sweet, sweet judgment. Then, it started to walk toward me. I scrambled up and ran. I vaulted over the counter, my bad knee screaming in protest, but adrenaline is a powerful drug. I landed on the other side, near the grill. You can't run from yourself, Cynthia, the voice boomed. It wasn't just coming from Mike now. It was coming from the walls. From the ceiling vents. From the drain in the sink. Where will you go? The kitchen? The freezer? The bathroom where you cry on your breaks? I backed toward the kitchen swing doors. My eyes darted to the front windows. The figures outside were closer. They were pressed against the glass now. Dozens of faces, pale and distorted, mashed against the windowpane like curious fish in a tank. They were mouthing words I couldn't hear, but I could read their lips. Open. 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 Leave me alone. I shrieked. I threw the sugar dispenser at Mike. It hit him square in the chest. He didn't even flinch. It bounced off him like he was made of stone and shattered on the floor. We don't want to leave you alone, Mike said, stepping closer to the counter. He placed his massive hands on the formica top. The laminate started to blister and blacken under his touch, smoke rising up. We want to know you. We want to know you the way he never did. I turned and burst through the swing doors into the kitchen. I expected the familiar layout, the stainless steel prep tables, the deep fryers, the dish pit in the back. But the kitchen was wrong. It was too long. The hallway stretching back to the freezer seemed to go on for miles. The ceiling was too high, lost in shadow. And the smell of bacon and grease was gone. Instead, it smelled like antiseptic. Like rubbing alcohol and floor wax. It smelled like a hospital. My heart hammered against my ribs. No. No, no, no. I started walking down the elongated kitchen. To my left, where the stove should have been, there was a row of chairs. Waiting room chairs. The vinyl was cracked and orange. Sitting in one of the chairs was a young woman. She was wearing a yellow raincoat. Her head was down, her hair wet and stringy, hiding her face. She was sobbing. Quiet, hitching sobs that echoed in the vast, metallic space. I stopped. My breath caught in my throat. I knew that raincoat. I bought it at Kmart in 1995. No, I whispered. This isn't real. The woman in the chair looked up. It was me. It was 24-year-old me. Her face was swollen from crying. Her eyes were red-rimmed and terrified. She looked right at me, at the 44-year-old me standing there in a stained waitress uniform, and she didn't see a stranger. She saw her future. It hurts, the younger me whispered. She clutched her stomach. I don't want to do it. But I can't afford a baby. I can't. Don't do it. I yelled at her. Cynthia, get up. Walk out. Don't you dare go into that room. I ran toward her, reaching out to grab her arm, to pull her out of that chair, out of that memory. But my hand passed right through her. She was like smoke. Cold, damp smoke. The younger me stood up. A door opened in the wall behind her, a door that shouldn't be there. A nurse in a surgical mask stood in the doorway. The nurse's eyes were black voids. Cynthia, the nurse called. The doctor is ready for you. Run. I screamed at my younger self. Run away. It destroys everything. It breaks you. The younger me wiped her nose on her sleeve, took a shaky breath, and walked toward the door. As she passed me, she whispered, God will forgive me. He has to. He's merciful, right? Then the door slammed shut. And the sound of the slam wasn't a door closing. It was the sound of a heavy metal lock sliding into place. Clang. The hospital vision dissolved. The walls rushed back in. I was back in the diner kitchen, but the lights were flickering violently now. The fryers were bubbling over, but it wasn't oil in the vats. It was a thick, black tar that smelled like burning rubber. I heard the swing doors behind me crash open. He is merciful, the voice of the stranger/Mike boomed from the dining room. But mercy requires repentance, Cynthia. And you just have excuses. I ran. I ran past the dish pit, where the water in the sink was boiling red. I ran toward the back exit, the heavy steel door that led to the dumpster alley. I hit the push bar with my shoulder, praying it would open, praying for the cold night air. It wouldn't budge. It was welded shut. No, not welded. It was fused. The metal of the door had melted into the frame. I pounded on it with my fists. Help. Somebody help me. No one can hear you, the voice was closer now. Just on the other side of the prep table. You built this prison, brick by brick. Every Sunday you slept in. Every prayer you didn't say. Every time you chose the easy way instead of the right way. This is your architecture, Cynthia. I spun around, my back against the sealed door. Mike, or the thing that used to be Mike, was standing at the end of the prep line. He was holding a butcher knife. But he wasn't holding it by the handle. He was gripping the blade, his blood dripping down, mixing with the black tar on the floor. The scalp, he said, raising his other hand. The skin napkin was still clutched there. Do you know whose scalp this is, Cynthia? I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. I don't want to know. It's yours, he whispered. My hands flew to my head. My hair was there. I could feel it. Not this body, he sneered, taking a step closer. Your soul. This is a piece of your spiritual body. Dead. Cut away. Necrotic. We harvest the dead parts, Cynthia. And you are mostly dead parts now. He lunged. I screamed and dove to the right, sliding on the greasy floor. The knife slammed into the steel door where my head had been a second ago, sparks flying. I scrambled on hands and knees toward the only place left. The walk-in freezer. It was my only chance. It had a heavy latch. If I could get inside, maybe I could lock him out. Maybe the cold would slow him down. I threw myself at the freezer handle, yanked it down, and pulled. The heavy insulated door swung open. I fell inside and kicked the door shut behind me, jamming the safety latch home. I collapsed on the metal grating of the floor, gasping for air, waiting for the pounding on the door. Waiting for the monster to break in. But there was no pounding. Silence. I lay there in the dark, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I waited for the cold to hit me. The freezer is usually set to 0 degrees. It chills your sweat in seconds. But I wasn't cold. I sat up slowly. It was warm. It was hot. I felt a bead of sweat roll down my forehead. Then another. The air in the freezer was thick, humid, and stiflingly hot. I fumbled for the light switch on the wall. I found it and flipped it. The bulb overhead didn't flicker on. Instead, a red glow started to emanate from the floor. From beneath the metal grating. I looked down. There was no concrete floor beneath the grate. There was a drop. A deep, impossible drop into a canyon of fire. I scrambled back, pressing myself against the shelves of frozen French fries and burger patties. But the boxes were melting. The cardboard was disintegrating. The meat inside was sizzling, cooking right there on the shelves. You think a door can stop us? The voice whispered. It wasn't outside anymore. It was in the freezer with me. I looked up. Sitting on a stack of melting boxes of ice cream was the stranger. The man from the booth. He wasn't wearing his human face anymore. The skin of his face was peeling back like old wallpaper, revealing muscle and bone that burned with an inner light. His eyes were 2 tunnels into an abyss. You accepted the tip, he said. His voice was no longer a gravelly rumble. It was the sound of a roaring furnace. You took it into your hand. You accepted the transaction. I didn't know. I cried. I didn't know what it was. Ignorance is not innocence, he said. He stood up, and the heat in the room spiked. My uniform felt like it was shrinking against my skin. You knew. Deep down, you always knew. You knew when you stopped praying. You knew when you ignored the Bible your mother gave you. You knew when you lived your life as if this world was all that mattered. He reached out a hand. His fingers were long, charred talons. Matthew 7 verse 23, he recited. Depart from me, I never knew you. Why are you doing this? I sobbed. I'm just a waitress. I'm nobody. To him, the demon sneered, pointing upward. To him, you were a daughter. A princess. He bought you with a price. He knocked at your door for 40 years, Cynthia. 40 years of knocking. And you put on headphones. You turned up the TV. You worked overtime. He leaned in close. The heat was blistering now. But to us? He smiled, and smoke poured from his mouth. To us, you are food. You are fuel. And the harvest is ready. No! I screamed. Jesus! Help me! Jesus! The name hit the demon like a physical blow. He flinched, hissing, and stepped back. The fire beneath the grate dimmed for a split second. "Do not speak that name here," he roared, and the room shook. Boxes tumbled off the shelves. I saw it. I saw the fear in his eyes. Just a flicker. But it was there. "Jesus!" I yelled louder. "Jesus, save me!" The demon snarled, his face contorting into a mask of pure hate. "He cannot hear you. You are mine. You signed the contract with your life." He lunged at me, his talons aiming for my throat. I squeezed my eyes shut and screamed the name again. "Jesus!" The floor beneath me gave way. The metal grating snapped. I fell. I fell into the red glow. I fell past the burning meat and the melting ice cream. I fell out of the world of Sal's diner and into something much, much older. As I fell, the wind rushing past my ears wasn't wind. It was voices. Millions of them. Screaming one word. Forever. 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 I hit the ground hard. But it wasn't rock. It was soft. Squishy. Wet. I opened my eyes. I was standing in a field. But the grass wasn't grass. It was hair. Millions of strands of black, coarse hair growing out of a pale, fleshy ground that pulsed like a heartbeat. The sky above was a bruised purple, swirling with storm clouds that looked like faces in agony. And standing in front of me, stretching as far as the eye could see, was a line of people. They were all naked. They were all weeping. And they were all holding something in their hands. I looked closer at the person nearest to me. A man in his 50s. He was holding a piece of skin. A scalp. He looked at me with eyes that had cried until they were dry husks. "Is it your turn?" he whispered. "My turn for what?" I asked, my voice trembling. He pointed ahead. In the distance, towering over the horizon, was a throne. But it wasn't a throne of gold. It was a throne of iron and bone, engulfed in black flames. "To see if he knows you," the man said. "But he doesn't know any of us here. That's why we're in the waiting room." "The waiting room?" I choked out. "Waiting for what?" The man smiled, a sad, broken smile. "For the second death." The second death. I didn't understand the words. I heard them, but my brain refused to process them. I was standing on a plane of breathing, pulsing flesh, surrounded by a sea of naked, weeping strangers, and this man, this accountant-looking guy with a comb-over and a paunch, was calmly telling me we were waiting to die again. "You don't get it," I stammered, backing away from him. My bare feet sank into the soft, hairy ground. It felt like stepping on a wet sponge. "I'm not dead. I'm just in the freezer." I fell. I hit my head. This is a dream. A hallucination. Carbon monoxide poisoning. The man shook his head slowly. He looked so tired. Not the kind of tired you feel after a double shift. It was an ancient, soul-deep exhaustion. That's what everyone says at first. "I'm in a coma. I'm dreaming." I just closed my eyes for a second. He held up the piece of scalp in his hand. The blood on it was fresh, dripping onto his bare thigh. "Does this feel like a dream, honey? Pinch yourself. Go ahead." I looked down at my own hand. I hadn't realized I was holding it. I thought I had dropped it when I fell. But there it was. The tip. The scalp from booth 4. I tried to let go of it. I opened my fingers. I shook my hand. It wouldn't fall. It was stuck. No, not stuck. It was grafted. The skin of the scalp had fused with the skin of my palm. I could feel the nerves knitting together. I could feel the dead blood of the scalp mixing with my own pulse. The leather-like texture of it was now a part of me. I screamed. I clawed at it with my other hand, digging my nails into the flesh, trying to rip it off. I tore at my own skin until I was bleeding, but the scalp wouldn't budge. It was like trying to peel off a birthmark. "It's yours now," a woman behind me whispered. I spun around. She was young, maybe 25. She had the look of a girl who spent too much time on Instagram, perfect eyebrows, even here in hell, and lips that looked like they used to smile for cameras. But now her eyes were leaking black oil. "You earned it," she said, her voice trembling. "We all earned our tips. That's the wage, right? The wages of sin is death. But the gift." She started to sob, a horrible, choking sound. "I never took the gift. I was too busy. I just wanted to have fun. I just wanted to live my life." "Stop it," I yelled. "I'm not like you. I'm a good person. I pay my taxes. I fed my kid. I didn't kill anyone." The crowd around me fell silent. Hundreds of eyes turned toward me. Eyes filled with a mixture of pity and terror. "You think this line is for murderers?" the accountant asked softly. He pointed a shaking finger into the distance, toward the endless queue of people stretching toward the black, fiery horizon. "Look at them, Cynthia. Look closely." I looked. I saw a grandmother clutching a knitting needle. I saw a teenager in a varsity jacket. I saw a man who looked like a pastor, clutching a Bible that was burning his hands, the cover charring his skin, but he couldn't drop it. I saw regular people. People you see at Walmart. People you wave to in traffic. "There are no murderers here," the accountant said. "Well, maybe a few. But mostly it's just people. People who thought they had more time. People who thought good was enough. People who said, I'll get right with God later. After college. After the promotion. After I retire." He stepped closer, and the smell of sulfur and rot coming off him was overpowering. "The murderers usually know where they're going," he whispered. "It's the nice people, the ones who just drifted, they're the ones who are surprised." "I have to get out of here," I hyperventilated. The air was getting hotter. The sky above, that bruised, purple sky, was lowering, pressing down on us like a ceiling of heavy clouds. "There has to be a way out. There is no exit," the Instagram girl wept. "There is only the throne." "I'm not going to the throne," I shouted. "I'm going back." I turned and started to run. I ran away from the line. I ran perpendicular to the flow of the damned. "You can't leave the path," someone shouted after me. "Don't leave the path. The things in the dark, they're waiting." I didn't listen. I ran. I ran until my lungs burned and my bad knee felt like it was going to snap. I ran across the field of hair and skin, the ground squelching and groaning under my feet. Sometimes, the ground would twitch. Sometimes, a mouth would open in the earth, a human mouth, embedded in the soil, and try to bite my ankle. I kicked them away and kept running. I was looking for a wall. A fence. A door. Anything that marked the edge of this nightmare. But there was no edge. The horizon just stretched on forever, a flat, desolate plain of gray and red. And then, I heard it. The sound of galloping. But it wasn't horses. It was heavier. It sounded like machinery crashing together. Clank thud. Clank thud. I stopped and looked back. Something was coming through the fog. It was massive. At least 20 feet tall. It looked like a chariot, but it wasn't pulled by horses. It was pulled by things. Distorted, crawling figures that looked like stripped muscle and wire. And standing in the chariot was the stranger. But he wasn't wearing the suit anymore. And he wasn't just the man from the booth. He was a warlord. He was clad in armor that looked like it was made from crushed cars and tombstones. He held a whip in one hand, a whip made of spinal cords, and in the other, he held a megaphone. He raised the megaphone to his lipless mouth. Cynthia, his voice boomed across the plain. It shook the ground. The mouths in the earth screamed in unison. Where are you going, Cynthia? The shift isn't over. I screamed and ran harder. But the ground was changing. It was getting steeper. I was running uphill. You can't outrun the law, the stranger roared. The law is perfect. The law is absolute. You broke the statutes. You carry the evidence in your hand. I looked at my hand. The scalp was glowing. The verse apart from me was burning bright red, like a beacon. It was a tracking device. He could see me because of the sin I was holding. Cut it off. I screamed at myself. Just cut it off. I saw a rock nearby, a sharp, jagged piece of obsidian sticking out of the fleshy ground. I dove for it. I grabbed the rock with my left hand and slammed the blade of it down onto my right wrist. I was going to chop my own hand off. I didn't care. I just wanted the beacon gone. I hacked at my wrist. Pain exploded up my arm, blinding white-hot pain. Blood spurted, spraying over my face. I hacked again. And again. I struck bone. I screamed until my throat tore. But the hand wouldn't come off. I looked down through the blood and tears. The bone wasn't breaking. The skin was knitting itself back together as fast as I cut it. The wound was closing up, trapping the pain inside. You cannot discard what you have become, the stranger's voice was right behind me now. I rolled over, clutching my mangled, healing wrist. The chariot had stopped. The stranger towered over me. Up close, he was terrifying. His skin was translucent, revealing a furnace of fire burning where his organs should be. The heat coming off him was enough to singe my eyebrows. He stepped down from the chariot. The ground hissed where his metal boots touched it. You try to amputate the fruit, he said, his voice dropping to a mockery of a whisper. But you never dug up the root. You spent your whole life managing your sin, Cynthia. Hiding it. Trimming it. Putting it on a credit card. You never killed it. He reached down and grabbed me by the throat. His hand was large enough to crush my entire head. He lifted me into the air like a rag doll. And now, he smiled, smoke curling from his teeth, the root has grown into a tree. And the harvest is here. Please, I choked, my feet dangling, kicking at the air. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. Sorry? He laughed. Everyone is sorry here. Hell is full of sorrow. But sorrow is not repentance. You are sorry you got caught. You are sorry for the pain. But did you ever grieve for the act? Did you ever weep because you broke the heart of the one who made you? He threw me. I flew through the air and landed hard in the middle of the line of people. I crashed into the accountant and the Instagram girl, knocking them over. Back in line, a demon with the head of a jackal screamed, cracking a whip over us. Move! The throne awaits. I scrambled to my feet, sobbing. I was back in the queue. I couldn't escape. The line was moving faster now. We were being herded. The ground was sloping downward, toward a valley. And in the center of the valley was the lake. I call it a lake, but that's too peaceful a word. It was a tear in the fabric of reality. It was a vast, swirling vortex of fire. But it wasn't orange fire. It was black fire mixed with white blinding light. It roared with the sound of a billion hurricanes. And above the lake, suspended in the air, was the throne. It was white. A white so pure, so bright, that looking at it felt like staring into the sun with your eyelids cut off. It exposed everything. There were no shadows to hide in. Every secret, every thought, every whispered lie was illuminated by that terrible, holy light. And seated on the throne. I couldn't look. I physically couldn't look. The glory was too great. It was terror. It was majesty. It was the definition of reality. Next, a voice thundered from the area of the throne. It wasn't an angry voice. It was a sad voice. A voice of infinite heartbreak. I watched as the person at the front of the line, a man in a business suit, was shoved forward. He stood before the brightness. Lord, the man cried out. Lord, I did great things in your name. I donated to the food bank. I was on the city council. I was a good man. The light didn't fluctuate. Did you know me? The voice asked. Or did you just use my name as a badge of honor? I went to church on Easter, the man stammered. My wife was very religious. I supported her. I know your wife, the voice said. She is with me. But you never opened the door. You stood on the porch your whole life, admiring the architecture, but you never came inside. But I'm a good person, the man screamed. There is none good but one, the voice said. And then, the verdict. The words from the tattoo. The words on my hand. Depart from me, you worker of iniquity. I never knew you. The man shrieked as the ground beneath him opened. He fell into the lake. The fire swallowed him, but he didn't burn up. He just kept falling, screaming, his voice joining the chorus of Forever. Next. I was getting closer. There were only 50 people ahead of me. Then 40. Then 20. Panic, primal and absolute, seized me. I looked at the accountant. He was weeping silently. I looked at the Instagram girl. She was trying to fix her hair, a reflex of vanity even at the edge of annihilation. I can't do this, I whispered. I can't. I looked at the stranger. He was standing on the sidelines, watching with his arms crossed, a look of grim satisfaction on his face. He caught my eye. You have a memory, Cynthia, he said. His voice cut through the roar of the fire. Use it. It's the only thing you have left. What memory? I cried. The Sunday school, he sneered. 1989, Mrs. Higgins' class. The flannel graph. The memory hit me. I was 7 years old. I was sitting in a dusty church basement. Mrs. Higgins, a woman with blue hair and kindness radiating from her like heat, was putting a picture of a sheep on the flannel board. The shepherd leaves the 99, she had said. He goes into the dark mountains to find the one lost sheep. And when he finds it, he doesn't beat it. He doesn't scold it. He puts it on his shoulders. I closed my eyes in the hellscape. Tears streamed down my face, hot and stinging. I'm the lost sheep, I whispered. You're not a sheep, the stranger hissed, stepping closer. You're a goat. You chose your side. You chose the world. You chose the diner. You chose the abortion. You chose the debt. You chose the bitterness. I am a sheep. I screamed, my voice cracking. I'm just lost. I'm so lost. The line moved. 10 people. It's too late for theology, the stranger mocked. Look at your hand. Read the receipt. I looked at my hand. Depart from me. It's written in ink, he said. It's written in blood. Is it written in his blood? The question came out of me before I thought it. It wasn't my thought. It felt like someone else whispered it into my ear. The stranger froze. His eyes narrowed. What did you say? I looked up at the white throne. The light was burning my skin. I could feel my soul unraveling. Is my name written in his blood? I asked, louder this time. Because if it is, then this ink doesn't matter. Silence, the stranger roared. He pulled out his whip. You have no right to speak of the blood here. You trampled it underfoot. He raised the whip to strike me. I dropped to my knees. Not to beg the stranger for mercy, but to talk to the throne. Jesus! I screamed. I know I don't deserve it. I know I'm late. I know I'm dirty. I know I ignored you. The whip came down. Crack. It tore across my back, shredding my uniform and my skin. The pain was blinding. It felt like being dipped in acid. But I didn't stop. But Mrs. Higgins said you come for the lost ones. I sobbed, curling into a ball. I'm lost. God, I am so lost. Please. If there is any drop of mercy left in the universe, don't let me die like this. Don't let me die without knowing you. He cannot hear you over the law, the stranger yelled, raising the whip again. You are condemned. He brought the whip down for the killing stroke. But it never hit me. A sound echoed through the valley. A sound louder than the fire. Louder than the screams. It was the sound of a heartbeat. Thump thump. The entire realm froze. The fire stopped swirling. The demons stopped shouting. The stranger froze with his whip in midair. Thump thump. It came from the throne. And then, a drop of blood, just one single, crimson drop, fell from the brightness. It fell through the black void. It fell past the demons. It fell past the stranger. It landed on my hand. Right on top of the scalp. Right on top of the tattoo. Sizzle. The sound of the drop hitting my skin was like a star hitting the ocean. Steam rose up. White, fragrant steam that smelled like lilies and rain. I looked at my hand. The scalp was dissolving. The thick, leathery skin was melting away. The black ink of the verse "Depart from me" was being washed out, scrubbed away by the single drop of red. The stranger screamed. It was a sound of pure terror. He dropped the whip and scrambled backward, covering his face. No, he shrieked. She is ours. The paperwork is signed. The voice from the throne spoke again. But this time, it wasn't directed at the line. It was directed at me. Cynthia. It wasn't a question. It was a summons. Look at me. I slowly lifted my head. I looked into the blinding light. And for a second, just one microsecond, the light dimmed enough for me to see a silhouette. A man. Sitting on the throne. But he wasn't looking at me with anger. He was looking at me with eyes that held oceans of tears. And he had scars. Deep, ragged scars on his hands and his feet. He reached out a hand toward me. You called? He asked. The stranger lunged at me. She's mine. Not anymore, the voice roared, and the force of it blew the stranger backward like a leaf in a hurricane. The ground beneath me dissolved. The hair, the skin, the mud, it all vanished. I was falling again. But I wasn't falling down. I was falling up. I was being pulled upward, out of the valley, out of the dark, toward that searing white light. The heat of the fire faded, replaced by a cold, rushing wind. I heard the flatline tone of a heart monitor. Beep. And then, I heard a paddle shock. Thump. Clear. Thump. We got a rhythm. She's back. We got a pulse. My eyes snapped open. White fluorescent lights. That was the first thing. Not the warm, loving light of the throne, but the harsh, buzzing, headache-inducing glare of a hospital room. The kind of light that hums like an angry insect and shows every pore, every stain, every mistake. I gasped. It wasn't a normal breath. It was a violent, rib-cracking inhalation, like my body was remembering how to use air for the first time. My chest felt like it had been kicked by a mule. My throat was raw, stripped of its lining from screaming. Easy, a voice said. A hand pressed down on my shoulder. A human hand. Warm. Dry. You're at St. Jude's. You're safe. I blinked, my vision swimming. A face floated into view. A nurse. Young, tired eyes, blue scrubs. She looked worried. Am I? I croaked, my voice sounding like grinding stones. Am I back? You're back, she said softly, adjusting a tube in my arm. You gave us a scare, Cynthia. You flatlined in the ambulance. We lost you for longer than we like to see. I lay back against the pillow. The sheets were scratchy. The air smelled of floor wax and rubbing alcohol, the exact same smell from the vision of the abortion clinic. I flinched, my heart rate monitor spiking. Beep. It's okay, the nurse soothed, glancing at the monitor. Just try to breathe. Dr. Evans will be in shortly. She patted my arm and walked out of the room. I stared at the ceiling tiles. Those generic, speckled tiles with the little water stains in the corners. I counted the holes. 1, 2, 3. I was alive. But I didn't feel alive. I felt heavy. Like gravity was working double time on me. My body felt like a wetsuit I was forced to wear, tight and uncomfortable. And cold. God, I was so cold. The heat of the lake was gone, but the chill of the void, that deep, interstellar cold of separation, was still sitting in my marrow. I lifted my right hand. I was terrified to look at it. I squeezed my eyes shut, counted to 3, and opened them. There was no scalp. No leather skin. No tattoo. But there was a mark. You're not a sheep, the stranger hissed, stepping closer. You're a goat. You chose your side. You chose the world. You chose the diner. You chose the abortion. You chose the debt. You chose the bitterness. I am a sheep. I screamed, my voice cracking. I'm just lost. I'm so lost. The line moved. 10 people. It's too late for theology, the stranger mocked. Look at your hand. Read the receipt. I looked at my hand. Depart from me. It's written in ink, he said. It's written in blood. Is it written in his blood? The question came out of me before I thought it. It wasn't my thought. It felt like someone else whispered it into my ear. The stranger froze. His eyes narrowed. What did you say? I looked up at the white throne. The light was burning my skin. I could feel my soul unraveling. Is my name written in his blood? I asked, louder this time. Because if it is, then this ink doesn't matter. Silence, the stranger roared. He pulled out his whip. You have no right to speak of the blood here. You trampled it underfoot. He raised the whip to strike me. I dropped to my knees. Not to beg the stranger for mercy, but to talk to the throne. Jesus! I screamed. I know I don't deserve it. I know I'm late. I know I'm dirty. I know I ignored you. The whip came down. Crack. It tore across my back, shredding my uniform and my skin. The pain was blinding. It felt like being dipped in acid. But I didn't stop. But Mrs. Higgins said you come for the lost ones. I sobbed, curling into a ball. I'm lost. God, I am so lost. Please. If there is any drop of mercy left in the universe, don't let me die like this. Don't let me die without knowing you. He cannot hear you over the law, the stranger yelled, raising the whip again. You are condemned. He brought the whip down for the killing stroke. But it never hit me. A sound echoed through the valley. A sound louder than the fire. Louder than the screams. It was the sound of a heartbeat. Thump thump. The entire realm froze. The fire stopped swirling. The demons stopped shouting. The stranger froze with his whip in midair. Thump thump. It came from the throne. And then, a drop of blood, just one single, crimson drop, fell from the brightness. It fell through the black void. It fell past the demons. It fell past the stranger. It landed on my hand. Right on top of the scalp. Right on top of the tattoo. Sizzle. The sound of the drop hitting my skin was like a star hitting the ocean. Steam rose up. White, fragrant steam that smelled like lilies and rain. I looked at my hand. The scalp was dissolving. The thick, leathery skin was melting away. The black ink of the verse depart from me was being washed out, scrubbed away by the single drop of red. The stranger screamed. It was a sound of pure terror. He dropped the whip and scrambled backward, covering his face. No, he shrieked. She is ours. The paperwork is signed. The voice from the throne spoke again. But this time, it wasn't directed at the line. It was directed at me. Cynthia. It wasn't a question. It was a summons. Look at me. I slowly lifted my head. I looked into the blinding light. And for a second, just one microsecond, the light dimmed enough for me to see a silhouette. A man. Sitting on the throne. But he wasn't looking at me with anger. He was looking at me with eyes that held oceans of tears. And he had scars. Deep, ragged scars on his hands and his feet. He reached out a hand toward me. You called? He asked. The stranger lunged at me. She's mine. Not anymore, the voice roared, and the force of it blew the stranger backward like a leaf in a hurricane. The ground beneath me dissolved. The hair, the skin, the mud, it all vanished. I was falling again. But I wasn't falling down. I was falling up. I was being pulled upward, out of the valley, out of the dark, toward that searing white light. The heat of the fire faded, replaced by a cold, rushing wind. I heard the flatline tone of a heart monitor. Beep. And then, I heard a paddle shock. Thump. Clear. Thump. We got a rhythm. She's back. We got a pulse. My eyes snapped open. White fluorescent lights. That was the first thing. Not the warm, loving light of the throne, but the harsh, buzzing, headache-inducing glare of a hospital room. The kind of light that hums like an angry insect and shows every pore, every stain, every mistake. I gasped. It wasn't a normal breath. It was a violent, rib-cracking inhalation, like my body was remembering how to use air for the first time. My chest felt like it had been kicked by a mule. My throat was raw, stripped of its lining from screaming. Easy, easy, a voice said. A hand pressed down on my shoulder. A human hand. Warm. Dry. You're at St. Jude's. You're safe. I blinked, my vision swimming. A face floated into view. A nurse. Young, tired eyes, blue scrubs. She looked worried. Am I? I croaked, my voice sounding like grinding stones. Am I back? You're back, she said softly, adjusting a tube in my arm. You gave us a scare, Cynthia. You flatlined in the ambulance. We lost you for longer than we like to see. I lay back against the pillow. The sheets were scratchy. The air smelled of floor wax and rubbing alcohol, the exact same smell from the vision of the abortion clinic. I flinched, my heart rate monitor spiking. Beep 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 beep. It's okay, the nurse soothed, glancing at the monitor. Just try to breathe. Dr. Evans will be in shortly. She patted my arm and walked out of the room. I stared at the ceiling tiles. Those generic, speckled tiles with the little water stains in the corners. I counted the holes. 1, 2, 3. I was alive. But I didn't feel alive. I felt heavy. Like gravity was working double time on me. My body felt like a wetsuit I was forced to wear, tight and uncomfortable. And cold. God, I was so cold. The heat of the lake was gone, but the chill of the void, that deep, interstellar cold of separation, was still sitting in my marrow. I lifted my right hand. I was terrified to look at it. I squeezed my eyes shut, counted to 3, and opened them. There was no scalp. No leather skin. No tattoo. But there was a mark. It's legal tender, Miller said. We checked. But the lab boys, they're confused about the stain. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping. It's blood, Ms. Wallace. But it's not Mike's blood. And it's not yours. Whose is it? I asked, though I knew the answer. I knew it in my gut. They couldn't get a DNA match, Miller said. In fact, they couldn't even sequence it. The lab tech said the structure was degraded. Ancient. Like trying to pull DNA out of a mummy. Or something that isn't quite human. He lowered the bag. And there's something else. On the back of the bill. He turned the bag over. Written on the back of the $50 bill, in ink that looked like it was still wet, were coordinates. Do you know what this is? Miller asked. I shook my head. No. It's a cemetery, Miller said. An old one. About 10 miles from here. Abandoned since the 50s. Why would you write coordinates to a graveyard on a tip, Ms. Wallace? I didn't write that, I said. My voice was trembling. He did. Miller put the bag away. He stood up. He looked at me with a mixture of suspicion and unease. We found drugs in Mike's system, he said. Meth. Maybe you two were partying. Maybe you got high and had a bad trip. Maybe Mike had a heart attack and you panicked. I don't do drugs, I said firmly. I'm a waitress. I'm a mother. Yeah, Miller said. He walked to the door. We're going to wait for the tox screen on you. Don't leave town, Ms. Wallace. Not that you can go far. He walked out. I sat there in the silence. The coordinates burned in my mind. The cemetery. Why? Why would the stranger leave coordinates? Was it a trap? Or was it the next step? I looked at my hand again. The scar pulsed. Thump. Thump. It wasn't just a scar. It was a compass. I felt a pull. A physical tug in my chest, pulling me toward the window. Pulling me toward the north. Toward the cemetery. I threw the covers off. My legs were weak, wobbly as a newborn colt's, but I stood up. I grabbed the hospital gown at the back to hold it closed. I had to get out of there. The hospital wasn't safe. I could feel it now. The walls were thin. I could hear whispers coming from the room next door. I could hear a dark, rhythmic chanting coming from the nurses' station down the hall. Maybe it was just the TV. Maybe it was just people talking. But to my ears, attuned to the frequency of hell, it sounded like a liturgy of the damned. I found my clothes in a plastic bag in the closet. My uniform was ruined, shredded at the back and stained with grease, but it was all I had. I dressed quickly, my fingers fumbling with the buttons. My shoes were still damp. I opened the door and peered into the hallway. It was 3 a.m. again. The graveyard shift. The hallway was empty. But at the far end, near the elevators, standing under a flickering exit sign, was a figure. It was a woman. She was wearing a hospital gown. She was facing away from me, her head banging rhythmically against the wall. Thud. 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 As I watched, she stopped. She slowly turned around. She had no face. Just a smooth expanse of skin where her eyes and mouth should be. I gasped and ducked back into the room. They are everywhere, I realized. The veil is torn. I can see them. And they can see me. I couldn't take the elevator. I couldn't walk past that thing. I went to the window. We were on the second floor. There was a ledge, and a fire escape a few feet away. It was raining outside. Of course it was. It felt like it had been raining for 1,000 years. I opened the window. The cold, wet air hit me, and it felt like a blessing. It felt like life. I climbed out. My bad knee screamed, but the pain was grounding. I shimmied along the ledge, the brick rough against my palms, until I reached the metal stairs. I climbed down, my feet clanging on the metal, echoing in the alleyway. I hit the pavement and ran. I didn't run toward my apartment. I didn't run toward the police station. I ran toward the highway. Toward the cemetery. I had to know. I had to know what was waiting at those coordinates. Because if I didn't face it, if I tried to hide, the stranger would just come back. He would come for me in my sleep. He would come for my son in Oregon. I had to end this. I hitchhiked. A guy in a beat-up pickup truck stopped. He looked normal. He had a crucifix hanging from his rearview mirror. I took that as a good sign. "Where you headed?" he asked, eyeing my torn uniform and the hospital bracelet still on my wrist. "The old cemetery," I said. "Off Route 61. He raised an eyebrow. "At this hour?" "Honey, nothing good happens in a boneyard at 4 a.m. "Please," I said. "I have to visit a grave. It's urgent." He drove me. We didn't talk. I clutched my right hand, feeling the scar pulse faster and faster the closer we got. He dropped me off at the rusted iron gates. The headlights of his truck cut through the rain, illuminating the crooked tombstones and the overgrown weeds. "You sure about this?" he called out as I stepped down. "No," I said honestly. "But I don't have a choice." He drove away, leaving me in the dark. I walked through the gates. The mud sucked at my shoes. The trees groaned in the wind, their branches looking like skeletal fingers reaching for me. I followed the pole in my hand. It led me deep into the cemetery, past the sunken graves of Civil War soldiers and coal miners. It led me to a mausoleum on the top of the hill. A stone structure with a heavy iron door, draped in ivy. The door was slightly ajar. A faint, orange light was flickering inside. I walked up the stone steps. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would burst. Jesus, I whispered. Be with me. Don't leave me. I pushed the door open. The inside of the mausoleum was empty of coffins. Instead, in the center of the stone floor, someone had set up a table. A booth table. From Sal's diner. And sitting at the table was the stranger. He was wearing the suit again. He looked perfectly human, perfectly handsome, perfectly terrifying. He was shuffling a deck of cards. You're late, Cynthia, he said without looking up. I almost started without you. I'm not here to play games, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I'm here to finish this. He stopped shuffling. He looked at me. His eyes were black, but there was a new emotion in them. Caution. Finish it? He smiled. My dear, we've only just begun. You survived the audit. Congratulations. But survival is not salvation. He placed a single card face down on the table. You have a debt, he said. Not to me. But to the balance. You saw the line, Cynthia. You saw the millions waiting. You escaped. They didn't. He tapped the card. Why you? He asked softly. Why were you spared? Was it because you screamed louder? Was it because you were special? No, I said. It was grace. Undeserved grace. Grace, he spat the word like it was poison. Grace is a loophole. It's a cheat code. And I hate cheat codes. He stood up. You want to keep your life, Cynthia? You want to keep that beating heart? Then you have to do something for me. A trade. I don't trade with demons, I said, stepping back. Oh, you'll want this trade, he said. He waved his hand. The air beside him shimmered. An image appeared in the air. Like a hologram, but clearer. It was a boy. A young man, actually. He was sleeping in a sleeping bag in the back of a van. He looked thin, pale. He had a needle in his arm. It was my son. My baby boy. He's in Portland, the stranger said. He's overdosing right now. Fentanyl. He has about 3 minutes before his heart stops. My knees buckled. No. No, please. I can wake him up, the stranger said. I can slap the needle out of his arm. I can make sure he calls you in the morning and decides to come home. I can give him a second chance, just like you got. What do you want? I cried. Take me. Take me back. I don't want you, the stranger said. You're marked. The boss has claimed you. I can't touch the merchandise anymore. He leaned forward, his face twisting into a mask of cruelty. But I want the scar. He pointed to my palm. Give me the scar. Cut it out. Give me the drop of blood that saved you. Renounce the protection. And I will save your son. I looked at my hand. The scar was warm. It felt like love. It felt like safety. It was the only thing standing between me and the lake. If I give it to you. I whispered. What happens to me? You become vulnerable again, he said. The next time you die, and you will die, Cynthia, there will be no drop of blood. There will be no rescue. You will go to the line, and you will wait. Forever. He pointed at the hologram. My son's chest had stopped moving. He was turning blue. Choose, Cynthia, the stranger hissed. Your soul. Or his. I looked at my son. I looked at my hand. I knew what I had to do. I knew what a mother had to do. But I also knew what Mrs. Higgins had taught me. I knew that you cannot trade the blood of God. It is not currency. It is life. No, I whispered. What? The stranger looked shocked. You'd let him die? I can't save him with magic. I screamed. And neither can you. You're the father of lies. If I give you this, you'll take us both. I fell to my knees on the stone floor. I didn't look at the stranger. I didn't look at the hologram. I looked at the ceiling of the crypt. Jesus! I cried out. I can't save him. I can't save myself. I trust you. I trust you with my soul, and I trust you with his. Do what you will. The stranger shrieked. No. Deal with me. I don't deal with the staff. I yelled. I talked to the owner. I slammed my hand, the hand with the scar, onto the table. A pulse of white light exploded from my palm. It hit the table, shattering it into dust. It hit the stranger, throwing him against the stone wall. It filled the mausoleum with a blinding radiance. The hologram of my son flickered. In the image, I saw my son gasp. His eyes flew open. He ripped the needle out of his arm. He sat up, coughing, gasping for air. He was alive. The stranger was writhing on the floor, his suit smoking. This isn't over, he howled. The war isn't over. I know, I said, standing up. I felt strong. For the first time in 20 years, I felt truly strong. But I know who wins. I turned and walked out of the mausoleum. I walked out into the rain. I had saved my son. Not by trading my soul, but by trusting the one who keeps it. But as I walked back through the cemetery gates, I realized something. The stranger was right about one thing. The war wasn't over. I could see them now. In the shadows of the trees. In the passing cars. The spirits. The demons. The lost souls. The world was crowded with monsters. And I was the only one who could see them. I looked at my hand. The scar was glowing faintly. I wasn't just a survivor anymore. I was a witness. And I had work to do. I walked back to the highway in the rain. I didn't try to flag down another car. I needed the walk. I needed to feel the pavement under my feet, the cold mud splattered on my ankles, the physical reality of the world to keep me from floating away. Because the world didn't look the same anymore. You know how, when you stare at the sun for too long and then look away, you see that purple blotch floating over everything? That negative space burned into your retina? That's what I have now. But it's not a blotch. It's the truth. As I walked along the shoulder of Route 61, cars would zoom past me. Before tonight, they were just headlights and metal. Just traffic. Now I could see inside them. And I don't mean I could see the drivers. I could see the passengers. A minivan passed me, driven by a tired-looking mom. But in the back seat, crouched over the sleeping kids, was a dark, spindly thing. It looked like a spider made of wet ash. It was whispering into the ears of the children. I could hear it over the roar of the engine. You're ugly. You're stupid. Nobody likes you. A sports car flew by, doing 90. The driver was a young guy, gripping the wheel. But he wasn't driving. There were hands, dozens of translucent, rotting hands, covering his eyes, steering the wheel for him, pushing his foot down on the gas. The spirit of recklessness. The spirit of pride. They were driving him straight toward a bridge abutment, laughing as they went. I stopped walking. I leaned against a guardrail and vomited. It's too much. It is physically too much to see the spiritual war overlaying the physical world. We go through our lives thinking we're alone in our heads, thinking our depression is just chemicals, our anger is just a bad mood, our addictions are just bad habits. We have no idea. We are walking through a battlefield without armor. We are swimming in shark-infested waters and we think we're in a bathtub. I made it to a gas station about a mile down the road. It was one of those brightly lit, 24-hour places that sell lukewarm hot dogs and lottery tickets. The fluorescent lights were buzzing. I walked in. The clerk was a kid, maybe 19, with acne scars and headphones around his neck. He looked up at me, a soaking wet, middle-aged woman in a torn, grease-stained waitress uniform with a hospital bracelet on her wrist. "You okay, lady?" he asked, popping his gum. "Need me to call the cops?" I looked at him. Really looked at him. I saw a heavy, gray chain wrapped around his neck. It trailed off behind the counter, disappearing into the floor. The chain was made of links, and on each link was a word. Lust. Pornography. Isolation. Shame. The chain was pulling his head down. I could see the spiritual weight of it crushing his spine. He was dying inside, suffocating in a prison he thought was private. "No cops," I rasped. "Just, can I use your phone? Mine is gone." He pushed a landline across the counter. "Make it quick." I dialed the number. My fingers were shaking, leaving wet smudges on the keypad. I knew the number by heart. I hadn't dialed it in 6 months, but a mother never forgets. It rang. Ring. 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 Please. Please let it be real. Please let the Mausoleum vision be true. Hello? The voice was weak. Raspy. But it was him. "Jason?" I choked out. There was a silence on the other end. Then, a sharp intake of breath. "Mom?" I slid down the counter until I was sitting on the dirty linoleum floor. I started to weep. Not tears of terror this time, but tears of relief so profound they felt like bloodletting. "Jason, are you okay?" "Mom, He paused. I heard him swallow hard. "Mom, something crazy happened. I think I was dying. I did a shot, and everything went black. I felt cold. I felt like I was falling." "I know, baby," I whispered. "I know. But then." His voice trembled. Then the van filled up with light. Bright, white light. It burned, Mom, but it didn't hurt. It felt like waking up. I coughed up the stuff. I'm sitting on the curb now. I threw the stash in the sewer. "Praise God," I said. "Praise God." "I want to come home," he said, and he sounded like he was 5 years old again. "I don't know why I left. I'm scared, Mom. I feel like I almost crossed a line I couldn't come back from." "You did," I said. "But someone pulled you back. Get on a bus, Jason. I don't care how much it costs. Put it on my card. Just come home." "I will. I love you, Mom. I love you too." I hung up the phone. I sat there on the floor of the gas station, hugging my knees. The clerk was staring at me. "You sure you're okay?" I stood up. I wiped my face. I looked at the chain around his neck again. "I'm fine," I said. "But you're not." He blinked. "Excuse me?" I walked to the counter. I placed my right hand, the hand with the scar, on the plastic partition. The scar was warm. "That chain is heavy, isn't it?" I asked softly. The kid's face went pale. He stopped popping his gum. What are you talking about?" "The secret things," I said. "The things you watch in the dark. The shame that tells you you'll never be loved. It's choking you. His eyes widened. He looked terrified, but also seen. How do you know that? He whispered. Because I was carrying a scalp an hour ago, I said. And I don't want you to die with that chain on. There's a key, you know. You don't have to wear it. I didn't preach a sermon. I didn't have time. I just wrote 3 words on a napkin and slid it to him. Jesus breaks chains. Ask him, I said. Just ask him to break it. He's listening. I walked out of the gas station before he could say anything else. As the door closed, I saw him pick up the napkin. I saw him staring at it. And I saw the gray chain around his neck loosen just a fraction. A crack appeared in the iron. It had begun. I'm sitting in my apartment now. It's 6 a.m. The sun is coming up over the Pennsylvania hills. It's a beautiful, gray, rainy morning. I can't go back to Sal's. I can't go back to my old life. That's Cynthia, the one who worried about tips and credit scores. She died in the freezer. She fell into the lake. I am what came back. And I am writing this to you because I need to warn you. The stranger told me something in the mausoleum. He said the harvest is ready. He said the shift is ending. He wasn't lying. Look around you. Look at the world. Does it feel normal to you? Or does it feel like the tension is snapping? Does it feel like the shadows are getting longer, darker, bolder? The anger in the streets, the confusion in the culture, the despair in your own heart, do you think that's just random? It is a coordinated attack. They are harvesting. They are gathering the tares to be burned. And you, listening to this right now, you are sitting in a booth. Maybe it's not at a diner. Maybe it's in a college dorm, or an office cubicle, or a lonely bedroom in your parents' house. But you're sitting there. And you have a menu in front of you. The menu offers you everything. Pleasure. Fame. Distraction. Numbness. Eat, drink, and be merry, it says. Ignore the knocking at the door. But the stranger is coming to your table. He might not look like a man in a suit. He might look like a bottle of whiskey. He might look like a website. He might look like a resentment you've been nursing for 10 years. And he is going to leave you a tip. He is going to hand you a piece of your own flesh, your own sin, and tell you it's a gift. He's going to tell you that you are your mistakes. That you are your trauma. That you are your shame. He wants you to take it. He wants you to hold it, to graft it to your skin until you can't let go. And then, when the lights go out, and the lights will go out, he will claim you. Because if you are holding on to your sin when you stand before the throne, the light will burn you. The light is only safe for those who are covered in the blood. I know this sounds crazy. I know you want to click away and watch a funny cat video or listen to a podcast about murder mysteries. But ask yourself, why are you still listening? Why is your heart beating faster? Why do you feel that cold sweat on the back of your neck? It's because you know. Deep down, in that place you don't talk about at parties, you know I'm telling the truth. You know that you are not right. You know that if the sky cracked open right now, you wouldn't be ready. You remember the verse on the scalp? Matthew 7 verse 23. And then will I profess unto them, I never knew you, depart from me, ye that work iniquity. The scariest word in that verse isn't depart. It isn't iniquity. It's new. I never knew you. It's about relationship. You can go to church every Sunday. You can give to charity. You can be a good person. But if you don't know him, if you haven't opened the door and let him into the messy, dirty, dark back rooms of your soul, then you are just a stranger standing on the porch. And the storm is coming. The hurricane is making landfall. The porch isn't safe anymore. You need to come inside. I'm looking at my hand right now. The scar is pulsing. Thump thump. It reminds me of the cost. Salvation is free, but it wasn't cheap. It cost him everything. It cost him the whip. It cost him the nails. It cost him the separation from the Father so that we wouldn't have to endure it. He took the tip for us. He took the scalp. He took the penalty. But you have to accept the receipt. You have to put down the sin you're holding. You have to open your hand, even if it hurts, even if it feels like you're tearing off your own skin, and let it go. And you have to grab his hand instead. I don't know how much time we have left. The veil is thinning. I see things walking down Main Street in broad daylight that would make you scream. The time for playing games is over. If you are hearing this voice, this is your warning. This is your wake-up call. This is the emergency broadcast system of the kingdom of heaven breaking into your regular programming. Don't wait for a near-death experience. Don't wait for the freezer door to lock. Don't wait for the demon to sit in your booth. Settle the tab now. Go into a quiet room. Lock the door. Get on your knees. And talk to him. Not with fancy words. Talk to him like I did in the Mausoleum. Scream if you have to. Cry. Tell him you're lost. Tell him you're dirty. Tell him you're scared. He is the good shepherd. He doesn't care how muddy the sheep is. He just wants to bring it home. My name is Cynthia. I was a waitress. I was a sinner. I was dead. But then I met the King. And now? Now I'm just a beggar telling other beggars where to find bread. The table is set. The choice is yours. Depart, or come. Choose.